So I got the dash cam footage from the insurance company here, but that's me in the black truck. And his trucker would not let me over, and he would not let me merge. I have the right of way. And he sent me right under another truck. Look what he did to my pickup truck. Like, freaking ridiculous. And then the cops show up and say it's my fault. Like, it's not my fault, obviously. He had to let me over. It's my right of way.
Watching the world burn, April Fool's Day 2025. Let's get into it. So the first story was coming out of a Megatron run. And like I said, it hasn't been community noted, but and he says his source is Telegraph, which is a news agency. So let's get into it. He says, Iran is preparing to launch a preemptive strike on Diego Garcia, U.S. military base. Iranian military commanders have been instructed to prepare for a preemptive strike against Diego Garcia, a key U.S. military base in the Indian Ocean. Meanwhile, the U.S. is now transferring huge amounts of weapons to Qatar, where 13 U.S. C-17A Globemaster III military transport planes have landed today. And of course, we also have flown in B-72s to other bases. So it does look like Trump is preparing to bomb Iran. Remember McCain when he said that? By the way, that's the most idiotic thing I've ever heard of. Trump ran as the peace president, and he's going to get a lot of Americans killed if we do this without withdrawing our troops from the Middle East, because they're all within range of all the Iranian missiles. Plus, I imagine Russia at this point is giving them a lot of anti-aircraft weapons. We talked about this in my previous video, so I won't go into any more of that. I just thought that was kind of breaking news. Then we've got Dmitry Medvedev. Now, if you don't know who Dmitry Medvedev, he's kind of Putin's bulldog. You know, he's the guy that says all the things that probably Putin tells him to say that Putin can't say, because Putin has to be kind of a diplomat. He has to be a leader, whereas Dmitry can go out and say whatever he wants. And we got two posts by him. He says, after today's court ruling, it seems that only Russian Cossacks can restore freedom to France, like they did on March 31st, 1814. Whether it won't be too late for Marine Le Pen is another question. If you didn't know, Macron has arrested his political competition and thrown him in jail, much like Biden tried to do to President Trump. Now President Trump. And then he posted another one. I thought this was crazy too. This just came out right before I made the video. And so, and I call this Russian derangement syndrome, but he calls it Russophobia. A significant number of European politicians have succumbed to the acute Russophobia, also known, he pronounces it in Russian, I'm sorry, a psychiatric disorder stemming from a bipolar affective exaggeration of Russia's influence on the life of Europe and Europeans. The condition typically alternates between two distinct phases, manic and depressive. It sounds like a Democrat, doesn't it? And we're going to get into the Democrats here in just a minute. You know I love to talk about Democrats. The manic stage is characterized by motor agitation, aggressiveness, and a tendency to provoke and attack stronger opponents without assessing one's actual capabilities against the target of the attack. Sometimes it ends in unconditional urination and defecation. Oh my God. That's why I had to read this to you. Oh my God. Examples of patients of the manic stage include Macron, Stammer, Stubb, and several other European politicians. See more at t.me, and then he gives the Russophobe address. The depressive phase is characterized by melancholy, emotional, and physical fatigue, eating disorders, hypochondria, and self-harm. A patient in the depressive stage of Russophobia may also harm themselves, including self-sterilization, self-castration. At present, this stage is more commonly observed in women. Ursula von der Leyen, Kaja Kallas, excuse me, in the hemophobiites suffering from drug addiction, Patience Zelensky, Stavrisville. I'll have the text for you. I know I'm not pronouncing some of this right. It's just the best post ever, man. Treatment is symptomatic. Traditional medications are generally ineffective. The best therapeutic effect has been observed with the combined use of strong sedative drugs such as Kilibar, I have no idea, Onyx, and Iskander. He's talking about the Russian missiles. I wasn't even getting that. I thought he was talking about some drugs, from the pharmaceutical companies. Oh, my God. And the powerful multi-component tranquilizer, Oreshnik. By the way, the Russians are mass producing the Oreshnik now. It's estimated they're going to have hundreds and hundreds of them by the end of this year, which is, if you didn't know, that's an intermediate range that's capable of carrying multiple conventional warheads, traveling at hypersonic speeds, or maybe what's the next phase beyond hypersonic? I don't even know. but anyway, it can hit anything in Europe, and so he's just putting this out. I just love it. And let's continue with the post. In particular, severe cases, nuclear neuroleptics such as YARS and Sarmat must also be used. If you didn't know, Sarmat is the missile that can fly around the South Pole and come in at the United States, where we have no defenses against that type of nuclear weapon. So, but let's get into the rest of the video here. It's going to be kind of a long video, but I didn't have a choice because so much stuff's gone on, and I wasn't even going to make a video. I've been a little bit under the weather, and that's why I'm not out hiking making this video. So I've been meaning to post. This is my post because people have asked me. They said, "What are the 6 types of Democrats?" And so I've put up the first 2 posts. So let's get into these real quick. So I've been meaning to post this for a while. There are 6 types of Democrats that I talk about in my videos. The most numerous is the meat puppet Democrat. And
this bit of wisdom from the man who wants to be president. Yes, Tim Walz, the worst ever vice presidential candidate, wants to go one better and be the worst ever presidential candidate. Listen here as he argues that Democrats should have gone harder embracing DEI, wokeness, open borders.
We let them define the issue on immigration. We let them define the issue on DEI, and we let them define what woke is. We got ourselves in this mess because we weren't bold enough to stand up and say, "You damn right we're proud of these policies. We're going to put them in, and we're going to execute them."
Republicans everywhere should be praying that the Democrats listen to him, because they will never, ever win the White House again if they double down on that idiocy. Now, talking about doubling down on idiocy and lunacy, time to check in with the ladies of The View. And here, Joy Behar claims that no sitting president has ever criticised his predecessor before Donald Trump. She actually said this.
They also have a tendency to blame the Biden administration. It's like, move on. That ship has sailed. I never remember in my lifetime a sitting president trashing a previous president. I've never heard that before.
Your hero, Joe Biden, wanted to put his predecessor in prison, Joy. We don't have time for all the hours upon hours of footage of Joe Biden trashing Donald Trump. So here's just 20 seconds of him repeating a dangerous debunked lie about Donald Trump and then saying we should lock him up.
When the president was asked what he thought had happened, Donald Trump said, and I quote, "There are very fine people on both sides. My God." That's what he said.
Bizarre. It sounds like if I said this 5 years ago, you'd lock me up. We got to lock him up.
Now to a woman who would no doubt be a finalist in the Victim Olympics. Here is a woman living in the West choosing to subjugate herself behind a niqab, a dehumanising face covering, and then complaining about how hard it is to eat in public.
I was struggling to eat in a ville at the beach, and this happened.
Usually it's a struggle for me to eat outside anywhere, and sometimes I can always just pull up my veil like this, eat through here. But I actually found a better solution. This is my solution, guys. We actually have a tent. There is a window, so I can just put it down when I'm eating, have my bagel, turn around, and lift my veil and eat this way. Everything's covered, right, Nugs? You can't see anything?
You can't see anything, no.
I can also turn around and eat. I just have to put this up.
Can I have a bite?
No.
Can I be in there when you're eating?
I don't want you in here when I'm eating. Bye.
Hey, but isn't it so sad that you have to rely on a tent to eat?
Yeah, it's sad, so make more female-only accessible places.
Oh dear, it's like chopping off your legs and complaining about not being able to walk. You know what? There are a number of Muslim majority countries, more than 50 in fact, where you can have all sorts of women-only areas, and those countries are also full of millions of oppressed women, many of whom would love to be free of the veil, to be free in the West. Perhaps you can swap places with one of them. Now, let's hear from a couple of our celebrity friends. They are always so in touch with everyday folk, so insightful and not at all self-involved narcissists. Here is Cynthia Erivo bleating about preferred pronouns. Hers are they, them. She identifies as a plural.
It isn't easy. None of it is. Waking up and choosing to be yourself, proclaiming a space belongs to you when you don't feel welcomed, teaching people on a daily basis how to address you, and dealing with the frustration of reteaching people a word that has been in the human vocabulary since the dawn of time. They, them. Words used to describe pedantically two or more people, poetically, a person who is simply more.
Oh, so if you don't want to deliberately mangle the English language to pander to the likes of her, then you're being pedantic. Don't you know she's more, she's so much more. You know what? This next gal argued the they-them message so much better.
They, them, energy! They, them, energy!
Oh, I love her. Never stops being funny. But let's go back to our insufferable celebrities. And here is Bob Geldof. It's been decades since he released anything that anyone wants to listen to. But here he is with another unhinged diatribe about Elon Musk. And here he says that he hopes to see teenagers mess with Elon's wealth.
If I was 15 or 16, I promise you what I definitely do, just for the lols, I would organise a boycott of all things Musk. I would organise a boycott of Starlink, Tesla, Twitter, X. And I do it because I've nothing to lose. But how amazing if you could mess with this guy's vast, inappropriate wealth.
Now, we are seeing a lot of Elon Musk-inspired derangement from lefties. Watch these damaged people scream shame at a dude in a Tesla. Yes, there's an epidemic of crazy lefty losers who are attacking Teslas and Tesla drivers. And these attacks are becoming increasingly violent. Watch what happened to this 61-year-old woman.
This is video from the victim's Tesla camera. It shows a green car pulling up to a Tesla on busy Route 66, then swerving in front to box the Tesla in. The driver then walks over to the 61-year-old woman in the Tesla and reportedly starts hitting her while she's sitting behind the wheel. At one point, the woman says she bit the man's hand. Moments later, the passenger of the green car appears to walk over and pull the attacker away. They finally get back in their car and drive off. We spoke to the victim today, who said she was terrified and can't understand why anyone would do this.
I'm ashamed of our society and what they're doing.
The victim, along with the other Tesla owner who received a threatening note and text, have both now signed up for a gun safety course at a gun range north of Flagstaff. They tell us they don't feel safe right now.
Unbelievable. Attacking a 61-year-old woman. Hopefully that lefty loon is behind bars and soon. This next lefty has been arrested for allegedly driving into a pro-Trump protester with his car.
We just learned that a 70-year-old man was arrested after Meridian police say he hit another man with his car during today's demonstrations at the Tesla dealership in Meridian. Police say 70-year-old Christopher Talbot of Meridian made an obscene gesture towards a counter-protester and then hit him with his car. Police say the victim had been driving a truck with pro-Trump flags and had just parked and gotten out of his car when Talbot hit him.
And if you've watched my videos, I've always said they're meat puppet Democrats, but I never formally defined it. So let's get into the formal definition. These are the brainwashed college university students, the legacy media watching Karens, and old people, and others who have Trump and Elon derangement syndrome. And I would ask, I add to that now Russia derangement syndrome. With Groks' help in my revised editing, a meat puppet Democrat willfully buries their head in the sand 1,000 times, too fragile to face the raw reality or the world spinning around them. Their ignorance is a deliberate, stubborn refusal to engage with the uncomfortable truths, whether political, social, or global. A Democrat is someone who is so rattled by the messiness of reality that they would rather suffocate in denial than lift their gaze. They will repeat this act endlessly as the world keeps turning. Of course, many of your church-going, if you're a church-going Republican or a church-going conservative, you can kind of relate to these people because I include them in the meat puppet Democrat category, but they're meat puppet conservatives if you want to look at it that way. And otherwise, Republicans are also included in this assessment. The number 2 type of the 6 type of Democrats coming each day. So let's get to the number 2 type of Democrat. And we're not going to do all 6. I'm not going to bore you with the whole thing. I'm kind of putting these out one at a time. And by the way, I got to flesh out the number 2 definition a little bit further. In my videos, I've described there are 6 types of Democrats. Refer to my first post about the meat puppet. So, meat puppet, BORG Hive Mind Democrat. As I flesh these out, I will be doing a series of posts. With Groks' help, I wanted to find the second type of Democrat, which is a totalitarian, authoritarian, communist, Marxist, and I want to add to this, anarchist. Okay? We can also include fascist in this description. I think that covers about every category of Democrat that I know, but they're all related. And so that's why I said I got to flesh this out a bit further, because I haven't defined anarchist and the other one. So totalitarianism is a system where the state seeks total control over all aspects of life, political, social, economic, and personal, often suppressing dissent, free speech, and centralizing power. If you recall, the Democrats were leading the Google and Facebook and Twitter. They were suppressing free speech. That's who a Democrat is. They're totalitarian in nature. Okay, if you got a neighbor, they can't stand for you to tell them the truth. They can't handle the truth. Okay, so let's get it. We saw this in the Democrat states during the China COVID virus pandemic. Take Anthony Fauci, for example. He cared nothing about human misery, only about his authority to inject nonsense into the Democrat meat puppets and benefit his corporate backers. See, that's part of the fascism. That's what fascism is. Fauci was, the government, they live with the corporations, and it's all one beef feeding frenzy, robbing you and me, and of course they're Democrat puppets. But the Democrat puppets go along with it. They're just like, oh boy, abuse me more. And by the way, that's the 6th category of Democrat, a sadomasochist. But we'll get into that one later on, in probably 10 videos from now. Communism, rooted in Marxist theory, advocates for collective ownership of production, the abolition of private property, and a classless society, typically achieved through revolution and a single-party state. So in other words, it's a commune. Everybody shares everything equally. But unfortunately, you've always got the one person that wants to excel above the others. So a person that works a lot harder in a communist environment is not rewarded. In fact, they're robbed from. And that's why communism never works. But in order for communism to exist, you have to have a totalitarian state that manages the whole process and takes money from a hardworking person and gives it to another person so that they can stay in power. Because that person that wants to sit and eat bonbons on the sofa, a Democrat, okay, they say, well, that's my reward. I'm owed that for I guess existing on the planet, if you want to look at it that way. Marxism itself is the intellectual framework behind communism, focusing on class struggle, economic determinism, and the overthrow of capitalism. Hence, the Democrats labeling conservatives as racist, Nazis, white supremacists, far-right extremists, and so on. So you could see how the Democrats want to label you if you're a conservative, or if you're a hardworking American, or just, a blue-collar worker. They're going to label you with these names because they're trying to define a class system. They're trying to make it so that, that you're going to go against the elite. And then, of course, they swoop in and become the elite. Well, right now, the Democrats are the elite. I mean, they're all in Congress right now, grifting off of all of us. Be sure and listen to my song, Go Grifters Go. Anyway, it's on my X channel and on YouTube at ThatCyberSecurityGuy, and on Rumble at The Burn, okay? And on Odyssey at ThatCyberSecGuy. All right, so let's keep going. How can we relate totalitarianism, authoritarianism, communism, Marxist, and anarchist tendencies to the Democrat Party? This is who I feel they are. Democrats want concentrated power, limited political freedoms, and the overthrow of capitalism. The Democrat Party as it exists today operates within a capitalist democracy, working internally to subvert it, whether it be using the permanent deep state or the importation of criminal illegal immigrants from around the world. Now, we get to a video that I want you to see, okay? Because Elon Musk, I can't do it any better than this video. It's kind of a long video, and I normally don't like to play videos this long, but this tells you what the Democrats were trying to do. They were trying to overthrow the Democrat United States by bringing in illegal immigrants, assigning them Social Security numbers so that they could vote. Now, I've talked about this on many, many, many of my videos, but I didn't have the proof. Elon has the smoking gun. And everybody says, well, give me the smoking gun. You're going to get the smoking gun. The Democrats are totalitarian lunatics. If you have a neighbor that's a Democrat, okay, they hate you. They hate you, man. If you have a son or a child, okay, that is a Democrat. Let me explain something to you, okay? I have a cousin, all right? His son was a Democrat lunatic, okay? The son had all kinds of drug addict problems. He did everything he could. He spent a ton of money trying to rescue his child from their lunacy, from their drug addiction and everything else. Nothing ever worked, okay? It's kind of like a parent, okay? When you've got an 18-year-old, which I guess I was to a certain degree, that's acting up, and you're just saying, I can't go to my job, I can't exist with this kid in my house, I got to kick him out. At some point, okay, if you have a Democrat friend, or if you have a Democrat neighbor, or if you have a Democrat relative in your family, at some point, you have to kick them out of your life, okay? Get on with your life. That's the only way you're going to be happy. God never wanted you to be miserable trying to rescue somebody that can't be rescued. That's why I'm calling them meat puppet Democrats. They are the BORG, okay? They're not salvageable, all right? So let's get into this video. This is the Elon Town Hall.
Tell us what you, Antonio is helping out with the Social Security. So just trying to review Social Security, where you may have heard that we found 20 million dead people marked as alive in the Social Security database. This is so crazy. And then you'll notice there's a strange trend here where how many Social Security numbers were issued. Do you want to?
Yeah, so let me tell you what happened here. We started at the top of the system.
You want to talk about a lot of maybe?
We started at the top of the system, mapping the whole system of Social Security to understand where all the fraud was. And there's a lot of great people there that showed us really a lot of waste. And so that came up with a big list of stuff that we're working on. You've heard some of that already, but this is what jumped out at us. When we saw these numbers, we were like, what is this? In 21, you see 270,000 people, goes all the way to 2.1 million in 24. These are non-citizens that are getting Social Security numbers.
Yeah, this is a mind-blowing chart.
Yeah, this literally blew us away. Like, we went there to find fraud, and we found this by accident. And this isn't political, by the way. My parents are immigrants. Yeah, this country's been great to us. My brother and sister are all born in Spain. I'm pro-legal immigration. This is not political. This is not political. This is about America and the future of America. And there are a lot of good people in the system that pointed this in this direction. I want to honor them right now, that work in the government today, who took risks to show us these numbers and tell us what's going on. Yeah. So I want to stop for a minute. I want to honor those people today. Very good people. Very good people. I have been from DC to Social Security offices to the border to track this down, and very good people have helped us along the way. I want to thank them.
Yeah.
This number, what this is when you come in the country, if you're illegal, there's a couple ways to come in. You come in through a port of entry, and you can tell them you're afraid, and they'll give you an asylum case. You'll get an interview, then you get in. That's one way to do it. Another way to do it is to just go to the border. Literally, this happened. I talked to Border Patrol myself. Elon was there too. I went to Laredo, and I went to Bronzeville. Elon went to Eagle Pass. You walk up to a Border Patrol officer, and you tell them you want to come in. They have a couple of choices. They could charge you with a misdemeanor or a felony under 1325, or they can make it an administrative offense, like a parking ticket, basically. They were told to do that, make it an administrative offense under the last administration. And then you go walk across the border, they do what's called a release you on recognizance, and they give you an NTA, a notice to appear, which to appear to judge. The wait times on judges are like average 6 years. Look at Grok, you'll see it on immigration judges. There's only 700 of them. This is 5.5 million people. Okay? So what happens then? Once you're in the country and you got asylum through one of these pathways, and we've mapped the whole thing out, you can apply for a work document. You file a 765, it's the work form. You get this form called the 766, that's the authorization, and then Social Security Administration automatically sends you in the mail your Social Security number. No interview. No ID.
This is worth just reiterating. It's not people sometimes think that under the Biden administration that he was simply asleep at the switch. He wasn't asleep, they weren't asleep at the switch. It was a massive large-scale program to import as many illegals as possible, ultimately to change the entire voting map of the United States and disenfranchise the American people and make it a permanent, deep blue, one-party state from which there would be no escape.
Look, if I hadn't seen this myself, I'm not sure I'd have believed it. I went through it myself and mapped it, and Elon is right. This is true. The defaults in the system from Social Security to all of the benefit programs have been set to max inclusion, max pay for these people, and minimum collection. That's what's happening. We found 1.3 million of them already on Medicaid, as an example. We've gone through, on every benefit program we went through, we found groups from this particular group of people, this 5.5 million people, in those benefit programs. And then what was really, really disturbing us was why. We're asking ourselves why. Right. And so we actually just took a sample and looked at voter registration records. And we found people here registered to vote in this population, yes.
And who did vote.
And we found some by sampling that actually did vote. And we have referred them to prosecution at the Homeland Security Investigation Service.
Yeah.
Already, that is already happening, right now. Yeah. And the truly disturbing thing, though, I just want you to know this, a truly disturbing thing to me, and the darkest thing about this to me, the voter fraud is terrible, but the human tragedy this created is extraordinary, because what you don't understand, and people don't know, and Americans need to know, that's why I'm here, is that human traffickers made $13 to $15 billion off of this, okay? That's the money that's going around the world, moving people around the world to our borders because of these incentives. How does it work? What happens? Hey, if you're in Africa and you're in Central America, you got to walk up through Mexico and through Central America. Who do you pay? You pay the narcos, you pay the traffickers, right? And we were told by ICE, it's between $20,000 and $500, depends where they pick you up, to walk across all those countries and get all the way up to the border. Where's that money goes? It goes to the cartels. It goes to human traffickers, right? There are 30,000 children that have not appeared on the notice to appear already. ICE knows this. 30,000 children, 270,000 children didn't even get notices to appear. ICE told us that kids are being trafficked back and forth across the border to complete families to make this easier. This is a human tragedy. It's not just the money, it's the people and the kids. And how many of these people died on the way up here that didn't make it in? What happened to them? We created a system here that created a incentive for people to come and be taken advantage of by these traffickers. And how do you think they get paid? Well, you're in Africa, Central America, you got $20,000 or $10,000 or $5,000 to pay these traffickers? No, you don't. What happens? You come in, then you owe them the money. You're an indentured servant. If you don't pay them, what happens? What do? They kill your mother, they kill your brother, they kill your family. What happens next? That's what we discovered. And I have to tell you, it's tragic to me. The tragedy, the human tragedy this created is extraordinary. That's the real problem. This is America. We don't do this here in America.
Yeah.
We don't do this here in America. People come here legally, and that's great. Elon came here legally. My parents came here legally. That's the way to do it. This is outrageous.
Yeah, it's pretty wild. I mean, you can see, because there's still actually a lot of people out there, especially in the sort of center third of the country, that somehow think this is made up by the right, or it's like some fiction. It's not, that it's somehow not true, but it is absolutely true. And you can see that if you look at things like the state of New York, which tried to make it legal for illegal immigrants to vote in the state of New York. That was only shot down by the New York Supreme Court a few weeks ago. And California has made it health care available to all illegals in the state. And they initially claimed that it would only cost $3 billion. It's now $9 billion and climbing. So it's really, if you create a massive financial incentive for people to come to the United States illegally, then that's what they will do. It's a very sort of, it'd be strange, it'd be odd if that didn't happen. So the thing that actually has the Democrats losing their mind by far, the real reason for these attacks and sort of the burning of the cars and everything is that we're going to turn off the payments to illegals.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, I mean, because that's not the deal. You know, it's simply not right. You know, if you look at that thing with the Roosevelt Hotel and the luxury hotels in New York, where the Federal Emergency Management Agency funds were being used to house illegals in luxury hotels in New York that the average American can't afford. And they were giving a welcome package and $10,000 debit cards and everything else. Like, it's super real. I mean, I think it's the biggest voter fraud thing in history by far. And moreover, if left unchecked, it would have succeeded. As Antonio mentioned, the time frame for going from asylum to citizen is roughly 5 years.
Yep.
And so all of the people that came in on that chart that you saw, if the machine behind the Kamala puppet had won, then, you know, they change out the puppet, but it's the same machine. Then they would have actually legalized all those people, and there would be no swing states.
And they added more. Remember, it was doubling every year.
Yes.
It went from 1 million to 2 million.
It was going ballistic.
It was going ballistic. And it is just, these people are just entering the benefit programs now, by the way.
Right.
We're seeing the ramp happen too. And these are just the ones that are in the system. This doesn't count the other, 7.5, 8 million that ICE thinks are out there.
Yeah.
We don't know if they have numbers. The number is totally uncontrolled. The voter ID requirement in this state is super important because of this.
Yes.
Because the Social Security number, it's not supposed to be a federal ID number, but it basically is. That's how you access all the benefits. This is why we need voter ID, because this thing is not secure. You could walk into a Social Security office today as an adult in America, and get a Social Security number enumerated with simply answering 6 or 7 simple questions and showing some forms of ID that are not federal ID.
Well, you can just actually make it up. You can show basically like a fake utility bill, or you
can show a medical bill and a school ID.
Yeah, yes. Medical bill and a school ID, and you can get a Social Security number.
Yes.
And then from there you get on the voter rolls, and then basically Dem operatives will follow the vote.
Yes.
So the problem with this obviously is that if you turn the swing states blue, then there are no swing states, and then we're in a permanent one-party system. And as soon as they win that, they'll have the House, the Senate, the presidency, they'll pack the Supreme Court, then they'll double down on the illegals, just like California. So we've already seen this happen in California. California is supermajority Dem. So, but at least California is held back by the fact that people can move out of state. Once you can no longer leave America, they'll be far worse than California. So the gravity of the situation is severe.
Okay, so there was that one. So, all right, and then let's just talk about Ukraine for just one brief instant, and then we'll finish off the video right here. So this is Che Bowles. If you don't know, he actually appears on RT, I think, from time to time. And anyway, Ukraine's devastating material losses in Kursk have been revealed. 402 tanks, 329 infantry fighting vehicles, 290 armored personnel carriers, 2,234 armored fighting vehicles, 2,569 motor vehicles, 590 artillery guns, and 53 MLRS launchers, including 13 of the HIMARS and 7 of the MLRS made in the United States. All a complete failure. Russia has comprehensively defeated Kiev army in Kursk. So if you didn't know, all along the front lines, and I've said this in many videos, but it's becoming much and much more rapid. Everything is crumbling. Trump thinks, putting a 25% tariff on Russian oil is going to do something. It wouldn't do jack squat, man. Russia doesn't care about sanctions at this point. They've become an independent country. They're doing just fine. Anyway, but I did have one more video for you, and let's get this one out of the way. And I don't like to borrow an entire video like this. George Galloway posted this on YouTube, but it's this woman, Jessica Burbank, and man, she's good looking, number one, and number two, she's smart as a tack. And I just thought this was a very, very interesting video because, and by the way, it does. I mean, look, I'm fair and balanced. I'm not all pro-Trump. I'm not all pro Hamas. I'm not all pro-Israel. I try to just give you the facts, and you make your own determination on what it is that you want. Everybody says that genocide, the term is hyperbolic, okay? But I don't know how else you describe, when Israel has bombed, 7 hospitals, dropping bunker busting bombs on tent camps in Gaza, yeah, they haven't killed them all yet. So I guess you could say maybe there's a better term than genocide. Maybe you could call it mass extinction or some other term. I don't know. You tell me. I guess it's considered hyperbolic. But anyway, let's watch this Jessica Burbank on George Galloway.
Is a correspondent for Dropsite News and co-host of Jess and John Pod. She is a rising star of the internet, and you're lucky you get to see her now here on the mother of all talk shows. Jessica, welcome to the show. The first time we've met, and I'm very glad to make your acquaintance. I've been dilating at some length for the last 20 minutes on the possibility, some would say probability, that all-out war is about to break out in the Persian Gulf. Not just between the US, the UK, and the coalition of the willing against the Islamic Republic of Iran, but of course, by extension, with the close allies, including treaty allies of Iran, Russia, and China. Did we dodge a bullet in the Ukraine, only to see it even more deadly in the Persian Gulf? What's your take on that?
Thanks for having me on, Mr. Galloway. Yeah, I think in the United States, everyone is so distracted that the conversation about the United States bombing the Houthi rebels on Signal was leaked. We're distracted with the fanfare of that whole ordeal. But I do think tensions are rising. We've seen documents leaked, reported by Ken Klippenstein, that the United States is considering war with Iran. It's this big idea. And it would be a grave mistake because this is a country that's been around and measures politics in centuries. The United States is such a new, baby, naive nation compared to what Iran is. It truly is a giant. And this idea that it's a good idea to show your strength by escalating in terms of violence, I think is an outdated concept, but our leaders are just so small-minded that, you know, if anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Trump in this administration.
Well, they say that it's about Iran's nuclear program, but Iran and the United States had a nuclear treaty. The JPC-OA had worked perfectly well. The people who are supposed to police the nuclear program of Iran or other countries, the IAEA, the Non-Proliferation Treaty, unless, like Israel, you haven't signed either and won't allow either in, but for other countries with nuclear programs, the IAEA is the policeman. And they never reported that Iran was in any way in breach of its obligations under the nuclear treaty that Donald Trump withdrew from. So does nobody even remember that in the US, that there used to be a treaty, a nuclear treaty between Iran and the US governing this very subject that you say you're now going to war over?
Right, yeah, our leaders rely on the very short memory of the American public. Same thing, Trump is pitching tariffs, and everyone's seemingly forgotten the trade war that sacrificed the farming industry in the United States, especially when it came to soybeans in 2018 when Trump was in office as well. So this short memory that we have is what the United States has relied on for years and years of intervention. And we saw J.D. Vance, the vice president, talk about the trade that's depended on by coming through the Suez Canal. And so it's always about commerce. It's always about power. It's always about controlling international capital. And to do that, the United States has mandated that they play by a different set of rules than they assign to every other country. When I was a graduate student, I got to work under Stephen Kinzer, who writes a lot about international affairs and U.S. intervention abroad, and he starts the course by filling his mouth with food. And through a full mouth of food says to the entire class, you know, don't eat in this classroom. That's one of the rules of this course. I'm allowed to eat in the classroom, of course, but you don't eat. It's very distracting. And he says, I'm the United States. And it's such a good metaphor. And it's the first time a lot of these American students really have a mirror as to how we're viewed in the rest of the world. It couldn't be more true what you're saying, that we expect our public to be convinced by the argument we have nuclear weapons as a deterrent, but any other nation that has them intends to use them for harm. And we just accept this. We have a baked-in hypocrisy that we're propagandized to have in the United States. It's how we're taught.
You're making me hungry with your professor's metaphor, wonderful though it is. Actually, J.D. Vance is the only man, and only partly, who comes out of Signalgate with any credit at all, any honor at all. He, from the campaign trail, messages that I think you're making a mistake. attacking Yemen. There's only 2 to 3% of the traffic for the United States that passes through the Red Sea. He didn't add, but he might well have, you're doing this for somebody else, not for the Americans. You're doing this for a different country, another country. And that is the long and the short of it, isn't it? If we go to war with Iran, we're not doing it for our own interests, quite the contrary. But we are doing it for Israel's interest, aren't we?
I would say so. Yeah, a lot of what the United States has been doing lately has been in the interest of Israel. And it's fascinating how the same group of interesting right-wing populists in America that voted Trump into office hold such contempt for the aid that the United States has sent to Ukraine, but are seemingly fine with Israel. And I think it's because this constituency is Christian evangelists who believe this understanding of Genesis 12:3, that it's meant to be those who bless Israel will be blessed. We've had members of Congress entering the Capitol building questioned about this belief on Israel. And it's a deeply religious belief that we are in a holy war and we have to protect Israel for religious reasons. Similarly, when we see the news about terrorists in the Middle East and, oh, they're Islamic religious extremists, we think of that as the worst possible thing. When we have religious extremism really dictating a lot of our foreign policy in the U.S. today. And so, again, it's this hypocrisy. How can these two things be true in the same mind? And they are. We're just judging the rest of the world by entirely different criteria. And I think the religious motivations are why they're able to convince the public we're giving so many resources to Israel while 40% of Americans can't pay their monthly bills.
Yeah, they love the Old Testament. The New Testament, not quite as much. Let's talk about the tariffs that you referred to. You've been sounding off very eloquently about this matter. It's like almost, Trump seems to me almost like a child. I mean, I don't know if you have children, I have many. And they go through phases and they get a word or an idea, which is their a-day fix for a month or a week, and they are never done saying the same word over and over again. And for Trump, that's tariffs. What's the impact on American consumers and the American public generally of Trump's tariff regime as announced?
Right. He's proposed all these ideas that we're going to end the income tax people pay if you're earning $150,000 or less. And instead, what's going to happen, if they even make good on that promise, is it's possible those earners will be paying more in the price increases passed on to consumers by corporations that they're paying to import goods. He's selling this as foreigners are going to pay the price. It's the foreign companies that are giving us a raw deal in international trade that are going to bear this cost burden, which is a complete misunderstanding of what the policy is or how it works. And it's fascinating that, his constituency is distracted by things like transgender rights in America, when they make up about 2 to 3% of the American population, when all of us have to suffer under price increases and inflation. And for some reason, people get so deep into those arguments that they're reading the science and research behind gender surgeries, but for some reason are not digging deep into the impacts of these economic policies, which are just as technical. But for some reason, we've been taught that economics is not a subject for regular people. But it is true that whoever is importing the good is going to pay that tariff, which is a tax to the government. And because they've promised steady returns to Wall Street, they're going to raise prices. They don't want to cut into their profit margins to take on the cost of the tariff. So instead, they're raising prices on all of us to cover that cost. So we are still paying a tax to the government. It's just in a different form. And he sort of sold it as, I'm saving the everyday American, and I'm really getting these foreign bad guys that are the reason we had inflation under Joe Biden. It's really a fairy tale.
Now, Jessica, you have to forgive me for my cynicism on this next point. My reaction to Donald Trump openly threatening his slave, serf ally Denmark with dismemberment and the open theft by force if necessary, he said yesterday. We don't want to use force, but we're not taking force off the table. We must have Greenland, which is a part of the sovereign territory of Denmark. Denmark is the most obeisant slave state in Scandinavia to US empire and has been for decades. It is never done with the mantra, Russia, Russia, Russia. In fact, it's trying to terrify its citizens with Russia, Russia, Russia daily. And yet it is now their own ally, Donald Trump, who is openly threatening to invade their territory and steal it. As Oscar Wilde said of the death scene of Little Nell, Charles Dickens' Little Nell, you'd have to have a heart of stone not to laugh. Well, I'm laughing at the possibility of Trump taking Greenland from Denmark. Is he really going to do it, though?
I don't think so. I think they've been severely humbled this week. There was an article, it was the best headline I've ever read, where they talked about U.S. officials going door to door in Greenland, asking people if they would meet with Usha Vance and J.D. Vance, and they couldn't find anyone. Is there anything more embarrassing than we asked everyone in this country if they would like to hang out with you, and everyone said no? And we said, oh, but it's the first or second lady of the United States and the vice president, and they were still like, absolutely not. I think Donald Trump and his administration have underestimated how people in other countries feel about their own country's status as not being a part of the United States. He did the same thing with Canada, and I think this is a deep embarrassment. And whenever Donald Trump gets embarrassed, he tends to, shake it off. Oh, I never really wanted Greenland anyway. And I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to see that because he's been met with this embarrassment, he's going to change his mind. I don't think he'll use military force for Greenland. I think he would more likely use military force to take Panama.
Yeah, although no need to take Panama now because the Panamanian puppet government there has capitulated and given BlackRock the ownership of the warehouses on the canal that Chinese companies previously did. But Canada is a more interesting apple that's hanging from the tree and coveted by Donald Trump, isn't it? Because it has produced exactly what you said. It has produced a coming together of the Canadian people, liberals and conservatives alike, in visceral opposition. In fact, they've even remembered that there's supposed to be a British territory with King Charles is being appealed to come to their aid. God help them if it comes down to that. Is he going to back off on Canada too?
I think he very likely will back off on Canada, and I don't think this is because he's strategic in any way and he's realized that he's galvanized the public of Canada. They're making decisions at the grocery store to turn any label that is a U.S. product away so that people know that that's something to boycott. Just the extensiveness of the organizing against America in these other countries is astonishing. I don't think he's going to say, oh, this isn't worth my time. It's not going to be successful if I try and annex Canada, which is an absurd idea. I think he's going to get bored of it and move on to something else because, like you said, it's a childlike mentality of this is the shiny new toy in the sandbox and I really want it right now. But the attention span is also that of a 5-year-old, and I think he'll move on to something else quite quickly because this isn't going his way.
All right, so we're going to finish off the video right there. I hope that, that you can kind of see if you've got a Democrat for a friend or whatever, and okay, if you want to keep them as a friend, I just don't think it's in your best interest because they're not looking out for you. They're not looking out for the country, and they certainly don't care to want to know if they're a meat puppet Democrat, what's going on in the world, which makes them a danger to society. Okay? And just like what's going on right now in Wisconsin, we got a lot of Republicans, last I heard, that aren't coming out to vote. And looks like this liberal lunatic Supreme Court justice is going to get voted in. And this is where that masochist, that sadomasochist Democrat or Republican comes in, okay? Because Wisconsin is going to go just like California. It's going to become a hellhole, all right? And once they redistrict it and they rig the elections in Wisconsin, which they're already rigged to a certain degree. I mean, Minneapolis, you can't say that those aren't rigged elections. Their lives are going to become a living hell, all because they wouldn't vote. Anyway, that's it, man. Peace out. Stay free.
Pues gracias a Dios me han ayudado a conseguir seguro médico, me han ayudado para obtener mi identificación me han ayudado a obtener el asilo, poder obtener mi permiso de trabajo y mi social.
Gracias a Dios ya me llegó mi social y mi permiso de trabajo.
Y que me llegue mi social security y mi permiso.
Do you have a worker's permit or social security number?
Solamente cuando pasamos mi esposa y yo solicitamos el permiso de trabajo, me llegó el permiso, solamente el permiso, a mi esposa le llegaron todos sus papeles, su social, todo, a mí nada más me llegó el permiso.
So you get a social security number when you arrive to the border. They give you one.
No, after I apply for asylum.
You apply for DoorDash, you have the work permit and the social security number. How long do you have to wait until you get a job at one of these food delivery companies?
Around for the app is like 1 week.
Sí, ando buscando el social.
So you're looking primarily to the social security number. And you haven't gotten it after over a year?
Sí, lo recibí, pero lo guardé dentro de los papeles y lo ando buscando.
Like, what was the process like to get that job? Did you have to apply, and how did it work?
I applied for myself and give me my working permit and my social. That's why I used the social to open my application.
Okay. All DoorDash needs is social security number and work permit?
Social security number and an ID.
And an ID?
And an ID.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have to interview with them or speak to anybody, or you just got a notification you can drive?
Yeah, it's a process online. You just fill the form.
Okay.
Yeah, after they open the account for you.
Okay. How quickly were you able to find that work?
Tanto que cuando te llegan los papeles, uno puede aplicar a la aplicación, o sea, abrir la aplicación, colocar el Social Security, del Social Security y el permiso de trabajo.
Did you get a social security number and a work permit?
Yo estoy pagando para eso.
Social security number, any papers that Uber requires?
No. Aquí, o sea, las personas que ya tienen el social, ellos se crean la cuenta y nos las alquilan a nosotros a un costo para nosotros poder salir a trabajar. Entonces eso es lo que tampoco me ayudaba mucho, porque tenía que pagar lo que es el alquiler de la bicicleta, más el alquiler de la aplicación, que son costos semanales, y entonces más